What about equipment and machinery? In residential care homes, equipment and machinery is most commonly found in those with daycare facilities, laundries or workshops. Now, a lack of preventative maintenance increases the risk of fires starting in machinery. Now, common causes of fire in equipment are, first of all, allowing the ventilation points to become clogged or blocked, causing overheating. You've got inadequate cleaning of equipment, such as tumble dryers. Defluff them. You've got allowing extraction equipment to build up excessive grease deposits. These are the sort of things you should consider. Electrical safety. Can you see anything wrong with this picture here? Now that's a real picture. That is an extension cable floating on 2 flip-flops in a swimming pool so that guy can have a Breville while he's having a few beers in the swimming pool. It's not been superimposed, it's a real picture. Does that look like a real hazard? Yeah? So electrical hazards. What are the signs of electrical hazards that you should be looking for? You should be looking for hot plugs and sockets, fuses that blow for no apparent reason, lights that flicker on and off, or scorch marks on sockets or plugs. Is there anything wrong with that? Would you report that? Yeah, would you report that? What about that one? Yeah, what should you do? If any of these occur, switch off, disconnect and call an electrician immediately. You should ensure regular checks are in place and that each person responsible for an assessment area is aware of the dangers and electrical equipment in their area. Now, the main areas to be aware of are shocks that occur from contact with live wires, or faults which can cause fires, or where electricity can act as a source of ignition, causing explosions or fires. I mean, these are the sort of things you want to avoid. Look at that. Does that look all right? What about that? Should you store kettles and things on top of microwaves? Yeah? What else have you got? You've got incorrect installation or use of equipment. You've got damaged or inadequate insulation on cables or wiring. So if you've got cables, physical damage on wires, report it. You've got combustible materials being placed too close to electrical equipment, which will give off heat even when operating normally or may become hot due to a fault. You've got arcing or sparking by equipment, overloading sockets. Don't get block adapters on block adapters. You've got inadequate servicing and maintenance of equipment, for example, electric blankets. Overheating cables due to a retention of coil. In other words, the ones on the drums. You know the ones on the drums? Do you pull them out to the full extent? Yeah? They're a fire hazard. You read them. It says on the instructions. Do you read instructions? Pull it out to its full extent. And you've also got a lack of maintenance or testing. Now, does that look all right? Does that look all right? There's nothing wrong with that. You've got a plug, three plugs. That's what it's designed for. The problem with this is, if you put 3 photocopies on it, it'll blow the fuse. The problem with block adapters, which is why we don't like them in your workplaces, what do people keep doing with them? They keep coming out, half in and half out. What's happening? It's arcing. That's why they catch fire. That's why they do that. If you have any doubt about the safety of your electrical installations, then you should consult a competent electrician. I mean, a lady on a course told me her husband's doing all his own DIY. She says she's got concerns though. He's recently rewired the lounge in their house. And she says, when I go near the socket, I can hear a noise going zzz, zzz. She said, what should I do? What should you do? Get an electrician out. Fire hazard. Get an electrician out. Don't overload equipment. Don't overload it. Correct fuses. You know how to change a fuse in a plug. 3 amp comes out. What goes back in? 13 amp bit of tin foil. Use the correct fuses. Pat testing. They should all be pat tested. How would you know? They'll have a label on him, something like this. You can see here there's a label on there. That's showing it's been pat tested. That's what all your equipment should have. Talking of fire hazards, does that look a fire hazard? Yeah, does that look dangerous? What about that? Is that the back of most people's tellies nowadays? That is. You've got all your equipment, your TVs, your hi-fi, DVD, Blu-ray. Be careful not to let that happen. What about that one? Does that look all right? That one? That one? That one? That one? That one? Do you switch TVs off at night? Yeah? Switch them off. If you've got residents with TVs in the bedrooms, if they're asleep, switch them off. A lady said to me, it's alright you saying that, mate, but I go in that bedroom in stealth mode. They're asleep, stealth mode, I sneak in there, as soon as I turn it off they wake up. I was watching that. Turn things off there, that power lead there is damaged. Would you report that? Something's obviously happened there, it's been cut by accident. Would you report that? Yes, you would. Does that look alright? Does that? What about that? Is you at Christmas time? You get all your lights out, your house is covered in lights, plug them all in. Don't do that. Don't do that. You can get extension cables, 10 blocks on one. Yeah, one plug, 10. It's designed for it. Don't overload these. That is a major fire hazard, and that happens at Christmas time, particularly with people with all the lights. These residual current devices are very safe. These are what you should make sure that your extension cables have got. They can provide additional safety. If you're operating at over 230 volts, it shuts off the appliance should a fault occur. If it does shut off the equipment, make sure you do extensive tests of that equipment before you do it again. And if there should have a test button on it, make sure you test it regularly to make sure the RCD button works. Next issue, smoking. Careless discarded cigarettes and other smoking materials are a major cause of fire. A cigarette can smoulder for hours, especially when surrounded by combustible materials. Where's the best place for a cigarette to smoulder? Down the side of an armchair. That's why there's no smoking in workplaces. Don't smoke in bed, you'll fall asleep. Many fires are started hours after the smoking materials have been emptied into waste bags and left for future disposal. Now, the control of smoking in care homes is very important, particularly where certain types of residents are concerned. For example, confusion in older people may lead to the careless disposal of cigarettes, and your smoking policies must be practical, but must also recognise the human rights of residents to enjoy their preferred lifestyle. In other words, they want to smoke, they've got to have some facility. Your risk assessment must take into account residents who wish to smoke in their own rooms, or smoking residents who are confined to bed and cannot access designated smoking areas. Risk assess. Human rights. I went to a care home, walking around with the manager. He said to me, there's our smoking room. He pointed to a cupboard. I thought, that's a cupboard. I opened it up, it was a cupboard. There's a guy inside on a chair, smoking away. There's no ventilation at all. I said to him, he said to me, do you want to go inside? I said, you're all right, I'll stay out here. He said, oh, that's Joe. He lives in there, he does. I said, he's going to die in there. That's not an adequate smoking room. Generally, you've got to risk assess where you allow your residents to smoke because of human rights. Consider operating a safe smoking policy in designated smoking areas and prohibit smoking elsewhere. All your staff, obviously, outside the building. Display your suitable signs throughout the premises, informing people of the smoking policy and the locations where smoking is permitted. Prohibit smoking in fire hazard areas, for example, laundries. So, in other words, any high-risk areas or any means of escape, make sure there's no smoking. In areas where you are smoking, you do allow smoking, provide deep and substantial ashtrays to help prevent unsuitable containers being used. Empty them daily, and don't empty them into plastic waste sacks, which obviously dispose of later. And you should carry out regular inspections in all areas, particularly smoking permitted areas, once these areas have been vacated at night. In other words, check them. And make sure the sign is like this, telling people this is a designated smoking area. Now, talking of smoking, I would like to say one thing. Live your life. Do you live your life? What's this lady here saying to you? What's she saying to you? Hey, when you saying to her, you should stop smoking. I've smoked all my life, mate. Live your life. Hazards in corridors. Does that look alright? Blocked exit. Is that your picture of your workplace? What about that one? Don't store things in your corridors, especially gas cylinders, cooking appliances. Don't put anything in your corridors. Make sure they're all clear. What about that one? These are real pictures. This is what people think's alright. Look at that. It says up there, fire exit, keep clear. Does that look safe? So, always protect your means of escape. Don't do that. Don't put chairs, anything in the corridors. Don't store things under staircases, even metal beds, because it starts off as a metal bed. Next thing you know, there's paint, tins there and everything else. Don't do that. Look at that. Fire escape, keep clear. Someone's put a chair in front. Is that okay? No, that's a care home. Move it. Especially equipment like this. Don't leave it in corridors. How are you going to get out of that corridor with all that in there? Don't wedge open fire doors with chairs. The next area I'm going to go through is restricting the spread of fire and smoke. Now, to reduce the risk to people if there is a fire, you need to consider how to control or restrict the spread of fire and smoke. The majority of people who die in fires are overcome by the smoke and gases. People don't die in fires because they're burned to death, they die from inhalation of toxic fumes. It is important, therefore, to ensure that in the event of a fire, the rate of fire growth is restricted in its early stages. Now, most measures which restrict the rate of fire growth in its early stages will also serve to restrict the fire spread in its later stages. Upholstered furniture, soft furnishings and textiles which are easily ignited or of rapid spread of flame characteristics should, where practical, be avoided in any type of care home, and all such products should meet a recognised fire performance standard. They should all meet the acceptable requirement. They've all got the kite mark on it saying it's fire retardant. Residents should only be allowed to provide items of their own furniture or textiles for their own bedrooms if the item meets a fire performance, particularly if they share the bedroom with other residents. You've got to be careful with bedding and sleepwear. Bedding and sleepwear should also meet recognised standards of fire performance. Check with the supplier to make sure it does. They're the sort of issues we need to cover.